All right, hello and welcome back to another episode of Just a Girl from Cleveland. This is episode 129. I hope everyone has had a great weekend, enjoyed their week so far. It is that time of year in Cleveland where it is cold and I am not enjoying the weather and thinking about how many months of this weather we have to go through. I think that's the worst part about this time of year of the winter is you're just anticipating how long it's going to be moving forward. It's going to be a couple months, usually goes pretty deep into March, sometimes even deep into April. So I'm just anticipating a long winter. But the one good thing, I might have said this on this podcast last year, I don't remember. The one good thing I always look forward to is December 21st is the shortest day of the year. So when, it's dark at like 4:45 p.m. or something ridiculous like that. I just remember that past that day, it only gets better. So if you live in the Cleveland area or somewhere similar with this type of weather, just remember that December 21st, shortest day of the year, and every day from there, even if it's just a minute that you gain in sunlight, it is getting better every single day from there. So something to look forward to as we move into these cold months. Something about the cold weather months, though, I like this is the only thing I like about it, is that I think it forces me to slow down. In the summer, in the fall, I feel like I'm go, 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 constantly moving. And I do like that the winter gives me a reason to just kind of get back into my routine, slow things down a little bit, refocus and all of that. So I think it is nice for that reason. I think if I lived somewhere that was like summer, beautiful weather constantly, I don't know how I would stop because I have trouble stopping now, but I think that would be like a dangerous life for me to live. I don't know. Maybe I'd like it. I feel like this is a thing someone says in a cold weather environment that's like, oh, I don't even think I'd like it if it was like vacation all year. Little do I know, like I'd probably actually love it, but it is what it is. This is where I was born, and I do love it. Okay, so we have some interesting topics to get into today that are a little different from the usual topics. I want to talk about the college football playoff selections that were just made this past weekend. I want to talk about some Ohio State players entering the transfer portal and just the state of the current program at Ohio State, where it's going, what these things mean, and just kind of how I'm feeling about it. And then obviously want to get into the Browns losing to the Rams on the road. Just thoughts on the game in general, kind of implications for the rest of the season as we move forward. So we will get into all of that. Let's start off actually with the transfer portal conversation, because this was the most, I think, recent development in college football, Ohio State in general. So Kyle McCord and also Julian Fleming actually entered the transfer portal. I guess the only other piece of Ohio State news that was big was that Marvin Harrison Jr. is a Heisman finalist, which I kind of figured was going to happen. Very excited for him. He's probably not going to win it, but it's nice that he gets to be there, be celebrated, get to be a part of the ceremony. I think that'll be really cool for him. But yeah, Kyle McCord and Julian Fleming entering the transfer portal. I think obviously the more meaningful one that is going to dictate a lot of where this program goes is Kyle McCord not being there anymore, not going to be the quarterback at Ohio State anymore. I saw some rumblings that the Washington State quarterback apparently is supposed to be transferring to Ohio State. I think Ryan Clark from ESPN had said that, but I have not seen that like fully confirmed anywhere else, anyone being 100% sure that that is the case. So I think I'm going to hold off on saying that that is like factual and that's why Kyle McCord is transferring, but it could be a potential reason is that he knew this other quarterback is transferring. He didn't want to be a part of a quarterback competition in that way and decided to go. That is definitely one possibility. Another possibility is he just wanted a different opportunity somewhere else and he didn't like where the Ohio State program was at this point in time. And look, as critical as I've been of Ryan Day, like Kyle McCord is also responsible for certain things that happened in these games that led to losses. So I hope he's not in a position where he's just like, oh, I could have done this, somewhere else. Like there is some personal accountability probably that needs to be taken there. But look, these are kids and I'm not going to tell any of them what to do, how to live their lives, what decision is the best decision for them. If this is what he feels, then he definitely should do it. I wasn't even sold on him being the starting quarterback for the Buckeyes next year. So I am very interested to see where they go. There's quite a few defensive players that have also entered the transfer portal. I don't think many of them were starters, so it could be that same story of wanting to be able to start, not wanting to deal with these competitions, or of younger players who have jumped them and been able to start over them. They just want to go somewhere and have an opportunity to play, which I definitely understand. It does make me slightly concerned when you look at the current state of the program, missed the college football playoffs, have lost to Michigan 3 years in a row, have lost in the playoffs multiple times as well. I wonder where this program is going to be in the next couple of years unless some real changes are made. I don't know what those changes need to be, but I feel like the program for the last few years has really been leaning on the days of Urban Meyer and what he built this program to be, how he was as a recruiter, the mindset of high school players when they looked at Ohio State and what they thought of it. I feel like Urban really did have a lasting impact on how people felt about the program, and that's starting to go away as each year goes on, and these students coming in are further removed from understanding what the Ohio State program looked like, and they're seeing other programs have the success that Ohio State used to have, and potentially not wanting to go there because it isn't currently the top program in college football, the Big Ten. Like it isn't having that level of success that high school players would look at and say, I want to be that. So I think the program is going to have to take a real honest look at themselves and say, what do we need to do moving forward so that we can be that program that we were, and respected, and everyone wanted to be a part of it when Urban Meyer was there. And I'm not trying to give Urban Meyer like so much credit. I know he has his faults, and he had his faults as a NFL coach specifically as well, and he definitely had his faults as a college coach. But I just think the way he had this program running is something that they need to look back at and say, what are things that we can change and implement today to have people respect Ohio State and look at Ohio State like that and want to be a part of it. So I don't know if that is moving on from Ryan Day. I don't know what quarterback you need to bring in to feel that, but I think they definitely need some changes to be made for sure, because you can't keep repeating what has been happening in the last couple of years. That's for sure. We don't stand for that as Buckeyes. Okay, so let's talk about the college football playoff then, kind of in that same realm. So the final 4 teams that are going to be in the playoff for the last year that there's only 4 teams is Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Alabama. This was one of the more controversial years I can remember, specifically for that 4th seed, Alabama getting in over Florida State. And there has been the big conversation around the fact that Florida State's quarterback got hurt, was it 3 weeks ago at this point? And obviously he was the star of that team and was a huge reason of why they were the team that they were and were able to win the way that they did. So losing him was a huge detriment to them, but in that same realm, they also were able to continue to win games without him. And they went undefeated, did not lose a single game. They're in a Power 5 conference and they missed the playoffs. So a lot of people are very upset by this because they feel like they should have gotten in regardless, even though their quarterback, their star player got hurt. It doesn't matter because they have already done the work to earn that spot, and that they deserve to be there. Even if the committee thinks other teams might be more talented, those teams have a loss. Example, Alabama. And so I think I understand the frustration of Florida State being in this position. The one example people keep bringing up that really relates to Ohio State was back in the 2014 season when JT Barrett went down in the Michigan game and Cardale Jones was able to step in that game, win it, go into the Big Ten championship, win 59-0, and go on obviously to to make the playoffs and win it all that year. And people are saying, what would have happened if the committee would have looked at them and said, hey, I know, you guys lost your quarterback, so you're just not going to be as talented and competitive if we put you in the playoffs, and they made the choice not to put them in. I think that would have obviously upset a lot of people. Now, I don't think comparing those two scenarios is a one-to-one, because I think a huge reason of why the Buckeyes made the playoffs in that season was because of that 59-0 win over Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship. I don't think you can ignore the context of that and say that these two situations are the same, because obviously Florida State didn't have as dominant of a win in their conference championship as Ohio State had in their respective year. So I don't think it's a one-to-one, because Cardale Jones was able to prove that he was able to be just as good as JT Barrett, if not even better than JT Barrett could have been in those games, and proved why they should be a playoff team, and then obviously ended up winning it all. Like I said, don't think it's one-to-one, but I do think it's a valid argument to bring up of like, how can we judge these teams without being able to see everything that they would be able to bring to the table, even with those injuries. Like Florida State could argue that, this backup quarterback that is now their starting quarterback hasn't had a lot of time the last few weeks to be able to learn to play with the ones, the first stringers, learn to play as the starter on this team. And if he had a couple weeks leading up to the playoffs, he would be able to improve and get better and have more time to be able to do it. And obviously now doesn't even have that opportunity to prove it. So I think the main thing that people are frustrated with is the inconsistencies of the playoff committee from year to year on what they value most. Sometimes it's strength of schedule. Sometimes it is those undefeated teams. This year it happens to be, just who they think is the better team, which I agree Alabama currently is the better team than Florida State. So in that respect, I understand it. I just think from year to year, they aren't using the same judgments to make that final decision, because it always comes down to a different question every single year. So I think it's been pretty hard to get down to those 4 teams. I'm interested to see how much better it is with 12 teams. Is it going to actually resolve those issues, and there's not going to be any more problems with picking 12 teams, and that the teams that are at 13, 14, 15 are really ticked off because they felt like they had a good argument to get in. I don't think it'll be at the same level that the arguments are currently being made at, obviously, for 1, 2, 3, and 4, because those teams are a lot better, and these teams that will be 13, 14, 15 aren't going to have as dramatic of an argument to make. But still, I think it definitely doesn't resolve all of those problems. And I think we're still going to see those persist. I do think it does help you, though, be able to find who that best team truly is if you're giving everyone that opportunity to go in there and play a game, so that maybe a 9 seed randomly comes in and really dominates because they're on an upwards trend towards the end of the season. You never know what could happen. So I am interested to see how it plays out. And I think people's mindsets are going to be in a really good place going into this 12-team playoff because of how angry everyone was about the selections this year. It's going to make people, I guess, feel better about having 12 teams, because they're like, yeah, the committee screwed it up last year, so I guess we have to have more now, and maybe people won't be as frustrated by that. So it's really, in a way, the committee, I feel like, is helping themselves look better by making a choice that made a lot of people angry this year. Okay, so yeah, that's all I feel like I have to say about that. Looking forward to bowl games. It's one of my favorite times of year, is picking all of the bowl games. I just enjoy always watching these random games, especially when the players are actually playing and not declaring for the draft or sitting out. I enjoy when you get to really watch a competitive bowl game, even between 2 random teams. So very excited about that going forward. Okay, so let's talk Browns-Rams. This isn't, an exciting conversation to have 2 weeks in a row about the Browns losing on the road once again. West Coast game, the Browns lost 36-19. I think the score looks a little bit worse than the actual game was, because I think the Browns were really in it and had a very real chance of winning that game up until about 5 minutes left in the game. And then things kind of started to spiral after the interception. There was like the random safety at the very end of the game. It got very much out of control. But I do think up until that point, like the Browns had the opportunity to go down, drive down the field, get a score, and tie the game up, really. So I don't think that score is like the perfect way to encompass what this game really was. So let's start with the positives. Joe Flacco, who would have thought I would be sitting on this podcast saying, let's start with the positives, Joe Flacco. Like, that sentence has never come out of my mouth before, especially last year when he ruined my life when he was on the Jets and we had that awful, awful game. And just for many years as the quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens, like, I would never, ever think I would sit here and say that something positive is Joe Flacco. But here we are, because it is the Cleveland Browns and we've had 7 million quarterbacks in my life. So might as well throw Joe Flacco in the mix. But I got to say, he looked really good in that game after that first drive where, for maybe the first time this season, the team was able to drive down the field to start the game and get a score. I don't even know the last time that happened. Like, Jacoby used to do that consistently last year. It was like the team would start the game by driving down the field and getting a touchdown very quickly, and then things would derail. This year, I think the team has really struggled to get a score on the first drive of the game, and haven't really done that at all up until this point with Joe Flacco. And I was like on top of the world in that moment. I'm like, okay, so now we're going to the Super Bowl. That feels like it changed everything, the entire trajectory of this team. And, you know, even though the game obviously didn't work in our favor, I think a huge positive out of it is that Joe Flacco can still play. He's got just a killer arm, great deep ball. I feel like the Browns have not had a quarterback that is a pure passer in the way that Joe Flacco is. You know, I think Deshaun Watson, DTR, the types that are, you know, going to run around a lot more like that, don't always have the arm that Joe Flacco has. So it was actually really fun to watch a quarterback like that be able to make some of the throws that he did. He actually looked a lot more mobile than I thought too in the pocket. He was moving nicely, better than I thought he would for 38 years old, hasn't played since like week 3 of last year or something like that. So it was actually really nice to see the offense be able to function in a different way, just with the arm talent that he has. I think that brings like a complicated question though for next week against the Jags on if DTR is ready. Kevin Stefanski hasn't made any decisions yet on who's the starter. I think before this game, I thought if DTR is healthy, you probably go to DTR, because I felt like his mobility was really going to give the Browns a chance to do something different, and that you wanted to build with your young quarterback. But at that point in time, I did not expect to see Joe Flacco play the way that he did. After watching that, I think Joe Flacco probably at this moment gives you a better chance to win, and you really do need to get a couple of wins here in these final 5 games. So I think I would probably go Flacco for starting against the Jags. Other than obviously he had, his great throws throughout the game, his one bad moment was that late interception in the game, which honestly I would say was it was a dumb throw. Like he just missed on that. He should not have made that throw probably at all. Obviously, I do not know what the play call was on that. And it's so fascinating to me how everyone always feels like they know what the play call was, where people think Kevin Stefanski went up to Joe Flacco and said, "Hey, Joe, you should just throw a bomb right now." Kevin Stefanski probably did not say that. I'm sure there were multiple reads that Joe Flacco had made before making that read, and there were multiple options on that play that Kevin was, hoping he would make, and he did not do that. So I don't think you can just jump to the conclusion that Kevin told him directly to do that. I just feel like that's not how play calling works. But in general, that was probably the one dumb play of the game. Other than that, I think he looked pretty solid in general. Obviously, the interception was almost poetic because it was John Johnson who made the interception. ex-Brown. Obviously, things did not work out for him in Cleveland. He did not have much success here in Joe Woods' defense. I have to wonder what he would have looked like in the current defense if he was not under Joe Woods' defense, and just with the rest of the talent that they have on this defense now. But I guess we'll never know. It just was like, I almost laughed when I saw that it was him making the interception. It's like, this is the only thing, this happens to the Browns. Like, who else does this happen to? It's just so ridiculous sometimes. So I'm sure that was an exciting moment for him, but just gut-wrenching for us because, like I said, the Browns were in it at that point. They still had an opportunity to take that game, and that pretty much sealed the deal for them. I think what was weird and concerning in the game, it felt like almost the 2022 team, was that the defense really struggled. The run defense struggled in general. They gave up 120 yards rushing. Matthew Stafford was honestly tearing up this defense in general too. 279 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. The pass rushers did not record a sack for the first time this season. Miles was clearly hurting in general. And even when he was out there, he didn't play very much, but even when he was out there, you could tell it just was not him. He did not record a tackle for the first time, I believe, in his career. The defense as a whole also only had 1 tackle for a loss and 2 passes defended. So pretty much an abysmal performance. And this was 2 weeks in a row that they did not look very good on the road. I understand, but it is a pattern at this point in time that the defense has struggled on the road and had a lot more success at home. And I think, hopefully this coming week that they're back at home against the Jags, that the defense can turn it around, because it was kind of an embarrassing performance. I mean, the Rams offense does have a lot of talent on it. Like, Puka Nacua is so fast. It was crazy to watch him and to watch the corners try to run with him. Like, he was just significantly faster than them. He had that 170-yard touchdown. It was incredible. So they do have a decent offense. So I'm not saying that, the Browns defense just played horribly against, the worst offense in the league. But again, it's just 2 weeks in a row. They've said they're the best in the world. That was not a best in the world performance for 2 weeks in a row. So I think, they're really going to need to bounce back at home. And they should have every opportunity to, because Trevor Lawrence will not be playing in this game. He has a high ankle sprain that he suffered in the game against the Bengals, who actually just beat the Jags, who are now 6-6, 1 game behind the Browns. They're going to be starting CJ Beathard. I don't even know how to say his last name, but that is who they're going to be starting against the Browns. So I am very interested to see how this is going to go, and I think it's going to tell us a lot about how the final 4 games are going to go. If the defense has another performance like they have the last 2 weeks, I don't even know how this team makes the playoffs. If the defense can bounce back, have a solid performance, and the offense can honestly do what they did this past week with Joe Flacco, I think this team is in a really good position to win the game. I think the Jags also have another injury with Christian Kirk. He's out, I believe, for the season. So yeah, it's gonna be an important game, and you have to get these ones at home. For as much as this team struggles on the road, it's really important to get the ones at home. They have 2 or 3 more home games. It is the Jags, the Bears, and the Jets at home, and then away at the Texans and the Bengals. So like I said, every single week leading up to this, these are all very winnable games, but we can't keep saying that and then losing them, because these last 2 ones were winnable games and we lost both. I think you probably need to get to 10 wins, so you need to get 3 of the 5 here in order to be a playoff team, especially just with how competitive the AFC is right now. Right now you have the Dolphins, Ravens, Chiefs, Jags as the first 4 seeds. The Chiefs have been dethroned from their 1 seed at the current moment. And then you have, for the wild cards, you have the Steelers, the Browns, and the Colts who have been slowly figuring things out with Gardner Minshew, who had a very competitive game against the Browns earlier this year. And then the outside looking in, you have the Texans also at 7-5. So Steelers, Browns, Colts, and Texans all with the same record. Then at 6-6, you have the Broncos, Bengals, and Bills. So all of those teams are right there looking in. So you really, I do think, need to get to 10 wins in order for this to be a real thing that the Browns can do. So it is going to be interesting to see going forward. I think the Jags is going to be one of the harder ones that they have to play. Well, I guess maybe not so much now that Trevor Lawrence is out. I think before it was probably going to be one of the harder ones that they had left. But I'd really like to get this one at home. I think being 8-5 would be way, way better than being 7-6 and having to win 3 of the last 4. So I am very much hoping that will be the case. I feel that even more after watching the Bengals against the Jags on Monday. Obviously, I think it says a lot about the state of the Jags defense that they, gave up as many points to the Bengals in the way that they did. But I think it also tells me that the Bengals offense is starting to figure things out with Jake Browning, and we play them in the very last week of the season. If that is going to be a meaningful game, I don't know what Browning is going to look like at that point in time, and I don't want to risk it. So I'd like to get some wins before that point so that we don't have to worry about it in the final week with that division game. Okay, that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening. Appreciate you all. If you could like, subscribe, share with a friend, leave a review or rating. I always appreciate those. Subscribe on YouTube. That one is always very important to me. Leave a comment on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, then you know that I'm recording this for my also podcast, but leave a comment on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube. I would very much appreciate all of that. It means so much to me. Thank you all so much for listening. And as always, go Browns.